The book Esperanza Rising by Pam Munoz Ryan depicts the experiences of 13-year-old Esperanza Ortega and her family as migrant laborers in California's San Joaquin Valley. This unit is designed with repeated exposure to understand the concepts of how the systems of class and caste have historically shaped the experience and interactions of people in both Mexico and the United States. The novel, Esperanza Rising, is about a young girl, Esperanza, and her family's experiences during the Great Okie Migration. Author Pam Munoz Ryan portrays the Mexican workers' plight during this historic period by calling upon her own grandmother, Esperanza Ortega Munoz's immigration story, along with other accounts from the period and research to weave together a story of family and their hardships during this period. Pam Munoz Ryan is an American writer for children and young adults, particularly in the multicultural genre. Munoz Ryan was born in Bakersfield, California, and celebrates her multicultural heritage of Mexican, Spanish, and Italian descent, and also her American cultural influences from Oklahoma and California. Munoz Ryan has written over 40 books for young people, including picture books, early readers, and middle grade, as well as young adult novels. An early childhood teacher, she worked for the Escondido, California School District for 3 years and eventually became a director of early childhood programs, after which she obtained a doctorate and began a writing career in children's literature. In 1999, Munoz set out to write a young adult novel that would capture the history and story of farm laborers in 1930s California, while also telling the inspiring story of her own grandmother's life in Mexico and the hardships in the farm labor camps of California. According to Munoz, when I was a child, I always assumed my grandmother grew up in poverty, because the stories she told were primarily about raising her children in farm labor camps in California in the 1930s. It wasn't until I was a young woman that she told me about her childhood in Mexico. I was so moved by her riches to rags fairy tale that I felt compelled to share her story. Pam Munoz Ryan. Esperanza Rising takes place in the 1930s during two historic and tragic events, the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. The book is set in two places, Aguascalientes, Mexico, and San Joaquin Valley, California. In order for students to understand the reasons behind Esperanza's family's choices and circumstances, they need to not only know the historic events happening during the setting of the novel, but also prior context and events that are part of the family history in Mexico. Themes of caste and class are presented throughout the novel as Esperanza's family goes from wealth and the higher class to poverty. The idea of the American dream is presented in contrast to the caste society of Mexico. This is expressed throughout the novel between characters. The events of Esperanza Rising occur during two major historical events of the 20th century. One is the final years of the Mexican Revolution, which broke out in 1910 and introduced a period of rebellion, civil war, and struggle between the wealthy landowners and the impoverished masses of Mexico. Esperanza's wealthy rancher father's death in an attack by bandits is used to suggest the jealousy and anger that was directed at landowners at the time. When Esperanza and her family flee to California for a better life, they find themselves in the middle of another major historical event, the Great Depression, a horrible financial crisis that affected the entire globe, and whose effects in America resulted in the displacement of countless individuals as they fought one another for opportunities at farms and work camps across the nation. At the same time, the Great Okie Migration occurs due to both the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. Munoz places Esperanza and her family in the middle of these historic times, and using her and her family's story to tell the history of this period and its impact on ordinary families. Munoz Ryan also uses her novel to call attention to lesser-known historical events from the time period, the rise of strikes in the California agricultural fields during the 1930s, as well as the Mexican repatriation of the 1930s and 40s. An act of federal legislation called the Deportation Act allowed the Immigration Bureau, through sweeps across the valleys and farms of California, to deport upwards of 500,000 Mexicans and Mexican Americans. As you and your students read Esperanza Rising, you will explore the ways in which the characters in the book navigate through these complex and difficult times. You will also have a chance to help students make connections to their own family history, current events, and the world around them. As your students explore the time period and setting that shapes Esperanza Rising, they will gain a greater understanding of the characters and events in the novel and make connections to historic and current events.